Hello everybody and welcome to this amazing guide for Season 2 Ranked Joust 1v1. In this guide I wanted to cover some basics to jousting. This mode is very different over the span of leveling your account. You may not have gotten to practice this mode very much, if at all. So hopefully with this guide you could jump into the rank scene and work your way to the top. The first part of Joust begins before you get into the game, which is the banning phase. This can set the momentum and provide the advantage or disadvantage from the start. You're given 2 bans, which should be based on the gods you cannot handle or that may counter your chosen god. For me, my personal choice is Kronos and Bakasura at all times, as I feel that these 2 gods are too much of a hassle no matter who I play. So knowing which gods counter your gods helps define which gods to ban. If there are too many gods that would overwhelm you, you should research and find which ones would be the most difficult for you to handle, and then practice against the other ones that you will have to face in the upcoming matches. Next, let's take a look at the starting build of the game. Your starter build determines whether or not you'll have a heavy power advantage against your opponent, or if you're going to have to play safe and passive. There are several ways to start your build, but the best and most powerful start I can suggest is picking up a starter item such as Bluestone Pendant or Vampiric Shroud, and then follow it with a power potion and healing potions. The only downfall to this is that you're required to survive for 5 minutes. Dying with the power potion active means you will lose the potion and fall behind the 450. If you feel you cannot handle this aggressive start, you can do a variety of builds, which there are a ton out there, and we can go into more depth elsewhere in probably another guide. That'll go over what starter builds you can do, if not that one. But that starter build of power should usually keep you going. But do know that you should always judge this based on whether or not your god has the power to use this build, or if you need to play passively and start with a more healthier defensive build. So as you're leaving the base, it's very important to understand how you should work your jungle and the purpose of jungle. So the lane minions and laning phase is really for you to get gold, but the jungle itself helps provide bonus amounts of experience, and taking these camps helps you gain an advantage over your opponent. So the red damage buff provides the most experience, is the most difficult to take out. Purple attack speed buff is the second hardest, but gives a little less experience, and then blue mana buff is the weakest and gives the least experience, but all in which is better experience than the middle lane. So it's important to know when you need to be in lane and go jungling. Anytime you can enter the jungle and take a buff, you should take the opportunity. A good example is going to lane and attacking minions and weakening them enough that by the time you leave, minions will finish them off and you'll still gain the benefit of gold and experience from the kills. You do not always have to be there, but you should also watch your opponent and make sure that they do not follow you, attempt to steal, or gank you at a buff. Vice versa, if you see an opponent go to a buff, if you believe you can handle them or attempt to steal it, make the move too, so you can take the experience from them and leave them at a disadvantage. The other strategy is if you cannot handle the jungle, as your character just may not be adept at taking jungle, you can instead bully the lane. And what this means is you continuously provide hard pressure to the tower, requiring your opponent to stay in lane, or knock your opponent out of lane by harming them enough that they wouldn't be able to jungle and they have to go back to base. This provides you the ability to push your minions into their tower so they lose gold, and then keep them out of lane so they lose experience. So when laning with your opponent at the early levels, it's very important to watch for level 5. Level 5 is what I like to consider a very critical moment, as it provides a level 5 first blood. And what that is whenever a god has an ultimate that's very powerful, typically gods can dish out enough damage that it would take you from 75% health to none in just a quick burst. Gods that can do this are Poseidon, Freya, Kali can tower dive, and so you really need to watch out for these moments that if an opponent that has an ability that could overwhelm you and they hit level 5, it's very smart to retreat, either heal or try to hit level 5 so you can scare your opponent off if you have an ability that could do the same. So attempt to reach level 5 before your opponent. You could do this by taking red buff at the start, as it provides a bigger bonus of experience, or you could do your best to bully your lane and keep your opponent out of the lane so that they miss experience. Knowing your build for Joust is extremely vital, and there's a lot to consider. But one thing I know that a lot of people overlook is your defense. So I've provided a list of protections and how much protection gives what reduction in damage. So it's a good idea to keep your protections for whatever you're fighting at approximately 100. A lot of overlooked information is, if you are fighting a mage or guardian, their damage is always magical, even their basic attacks. So don't attempt to build any dual protections, just build magical defense. Same goes for a physical type. If you're fighting physical, no dual protections, just focus on physical protection. You start with higher physical protection and you'll always have lower magical protection, so always try to get either 1 to 100 so you can reduce the damage by 50%. Also expect your opponent to have some sort of penetration, so the more defense you have, the more you'll counter that penetration. It's always important to remember that in this game, your objectives are the goal. You can kill your opponent 100 times and still lose the game. Just focus on taking the tower, Phoenix, and Titan. Your first tower is the least important objective, as it is the easiest to take, so it is not the biggest rush in the game. However, the Phoenix, on the other hand, is vital. If you can ever take it down, that'll give you a permanent advantage, as when the Phoenix comes back to life, it has its maximum health reduced by half, making it easier to take down a second time. Also know that the Titan is the only objective affected by buffs and spells. So for example, if you have an Executioner, it will not affect the tower or the Phoenix. However, when attacking the Titan, the debuff of armor reduction will stack, and it will allow you to provide penetration for the Titan alone. However, when fighting the Phoenix, a Titan's Bane is more viable, and the same thing goes for the magical penetration with Obsidian Shard and Spear of the Magus. So it's very important to keep those in mind, that you always focus the objective. It's not about killing your opponent. Finally, it's important to understand that the end game is the most important. When you reach level 20, death is a losing factor. Your death timer of 30 seconds can cost you the entire game. Make sure that you strive to survive at the end of the game, and killing your opponent means you need to take advantage of every moment. If you do not take an objective when you defeat your opponent when they have a 30-second timer, you're wasting a lot of precious time and giving your opponent the chance to come back. So securing a kill at the end game should guarantee you victory, and vice versa. If you are to die, your opponent should be able to push. But this also means that your positioning with your minions is vital. If you press your minions all the way to his base and you die, it is very unlikely that he'll press to your base and take your Titan, being he has to push with minions. Some characters that can backdoor, like Bakasura, Bastet, Loki, they could just rush to your base when you're down and take your objectives without any help of minions. However, when you're looking more at hunters or other mages, they typically need the wave of minions. So always consider this when fighting your opponent at the end game. Hopefully with all this basic information, you guys can hop into a qualifiers match and know what to expect from your jousting map. The best advice I can give any of you is practice the gods that you like, so you are comfortable with their playstyles, and learn to overcome anything that would counter your god, and learn to build a fluid item set that will help your god overcome any situation, instead of taking one set build into the fight. Thank you everybody for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, good game.